Um, welcome everyone. I think on Zoom we're joined by 18 people right now. Um, so welcome everybody, and welcome everybody on Facebook too who's watching right now. We're simultaneously live broadcasting there. I'm just going to do a very quick introduction before I pass the virtual mic to Julian Taylor. So we're very happy to have you. Our host is musician Julian Taylor today, and who is joined by our panelists, Arif, Uddin, Jeffrey Blasuti, Ingrid Tenda, and Chris Entz. And we will take some few questions from the audience during the last 10 minutes. So if you are watching us on Zoom, you can just drop your questions on the Q&A function, as well as the chat box. And if you're watching on Facebook, you can also please make sure to drop your questions on the comment section. And I will be monitoring both sides, and we will make sure to read all of them and answer them as much as possible we can. And I just would like to take a brief moment to acknowledge our year-round supporters, which is Toronto Arts Council, Ontario Arts Council, and Government of Canada. And would like to quickly remind you, those who are watching this live stream, that TBS, Toronto Bull Society, is a not-for-profit charitable organization. So if you consider donating, it's actually very easy on the website. There's a quick link, and then you will just receive an automatic tax receipt right away in your inbox. And I think I just want to thank you to the ones who have already supported us during the harsh times of COVID right now. And that's it for me. The virtual mic is yours, Julian.
All right, thank you, Uma. Hi, I'm Julian Taylor and the Money Matters panel. This is exciting because I think that there's an old saying that goes, guitar in one hand, briefcase in the other, and I think that people don't always think about that and lose track of finances and things that they can do to help them, especially during these times and regular times as well. I'm Julian Taylor, musician, and also the afternoon drive host for Element FM 106.5 here in Toronto. And we've got a panel of financial experts, as well as fellow artists and people that are here to help try to explain what things you can do to help tighten your purse strings or even make them overflow, I suppose. But this is awesome, and I also would like to just say I hope that everyone is safe and sound. I know these are tricky times. We're all in this together, this pandemic, lockdown number 2 in Ontario, and also want to acknowledge that this panel that we are hosting today, all of us are sitting on Indigenous land. So I'd like to get things started with Arif. He's got a great presentation that he's got in store. He's a bookkeeper and finance manager for Adventure Place and the Small World Music Festival. Hello, Arif. Say hi to everyone.
Hi. So as Tyler mentioned, I've been working with a nonprofit for a while now, and I was especially helping at Small World Music to manage their books and make sure that they have all the reports and everything ready on time. So let's get to the presentation. Then I'm gonna share my screen, and here we go. So as Tyler mentioned, we're going to talk about accounting, and my topic is accounting for musicians. So when I say musicians, it's like individuals, and I believe there are some companies as well, some small companies, mid-sized companies who are working with musicians and presenting music everywhere. So so the first question that may hit your mind is, why do we need it? Why do we need accounting? So the first reason why I'm going to tell, the first reason why we need it is like, so I'm going to divide it in 2 groups. Like here, I know that there are some individuals, incorporated persons, and also like there could be some registered corporations, small corporations, mid-sized corporations. So when we talk about individuals, we need it just to know, like, if at any point of the year, any time of the year, maybe at the end of the year or middle, if we want to see how much we have earned, how much is our income throughout the period, and how much you spend. and we can get it from our accounting, from our reports, our books and records and everything, right? And like for individuals, if they have to submit their tax at the end of the year, every year we all need to do that. So if you have your accounting reports ready, you can actually have those numbers from there, right? And some of you, like if you want to compare your year on year, financial numbers, for example, if you want to see the growth, your financial growth, how are you growing over over the period of last couple of years. So if you have your accounting and numbers, you can actually compare like how much was your earning last year versus this year and previous years at the same time, how much you spent over the period, how much were you able to save eventually. So you can get it from your accounting reports, right? And then if you're a registered corporation, then you have compliance requirement. You need to submit your annual financial statements, to CRA. And then if you are a registered charity, you need to submit your charity return. You have to claim your HST, right? You have to submit your HST return. So there are so many things that you need to do if you are registered. It doesn't matter whether you are a small company or a big one. So some of you may have, grants from different donors, different funders. So you have to do reporting for the grants, right? So this, if you do your accounting properly, it would help you to, do your grant reporting properly. And at the same time, when you apply for grant in next years, you can use this data as reference when you are applying for the grant, right? And as I said, for companies, they need to submit different returns to CRA, including their financial statements. So they need accounting for sure. And the most important thing, like if you think that, okay, my company is pretty smaller, I don't need anything, I can fairly manage it, but think about the people who owe money from you or to you, right? So if you have proper accounting system, it could be complex one or simple one, you can actually track your payable and receivables so that you can pay people on time. At the same time, you make sure that you receive the money you owe from other people. So that these are the reasons why I think. Of course, there are many other reasons, but primarily I would say these are the reasons why we need accounting. Next, move to the next slide. So if someone asks, okay, we don't want to be, we don't want to make it so complicated. We want to do it simply. So what are the simple ways to do it? So it could be even done in, simple spreadsheet templates. So you can make your templates, whichever is convenient for you, which template based on the volume of your business. You could be an individual, so you don't have to do so many things that the companies need to do. So you can just make some simple spreadsheets and then put your numbers, your transactions there throughout the period. And at the end of the period, you get a report there. So you can extract your report from the data you entered in your templates and submit the information you need to. Or if you think, okay, I want to be a little bit organized, or you're a company and you need different reports at the end of the period, then you can go for software. And the good thing is, with internet, with us, we don't have to pay for the softwares. There are a lot of softwares which are free, and you can have them online. And what you need, just an email address and maybe some other information they'll be asking to register for the account, and you start using them. And these are totally free. And if you are not, if you don't feel comfortable keeping your data in free softwares, you can use paid versions. So there are so many softwares which are really cheap, a couple of dollars a month, and then you can put all of your information there. So I just randomly picked some names here, and they most of them are free, and there are a couple for which you need to pay a little bit of money, and you just use and just make sure that you are choosing the right one that fits your business needs. And
which is your favorite paid version and which is your favorite free version of these software?
I think Wave is free, and that's pretty good. Like for nonprofit, companies. Like for example, I would say for a company like Small World Music, uh, or maybe a little smaller company, they can use Wave out of
Mm-hmm.
the free versions. But when you are saying paid version, I would say QuickBooks is a good one because
Okay.
depending on your size of the business, number of transactions, and kind of reports you need, they have different rates, and you can really pick, with very small amount of money. And then, and the interesting part is most of this software, they actually provide like a couple of months at the beginning as free trial.
Great.
So you
Okay.
pick one and see like how handy you are with this, and also you can check like what kind of reportings you're getting out of there and how complicated it is to maintain, right? Because normally, like whenever we see something online, most of the time, they come up with a lot of promises and everything. So it's very very important for the user to make sure that it fits uh, the requirement, right?
Okay. Cool.
So
And
that's, yeah, go ahead.
no worries. I was just curious. There's some other questions, but I'll save the questions for after.
So, okay, so what I'm gonna say, like, so there are some important factors when you are choosing something. I think there are a couple of factors which we need to consider at the time of, at the time of selecting whether we are going to use Excel templates, or I mean spreadsheet templates, or free versions or paid versions. So depending on a requirement. For example, you would not consider it same for an individual who just need to maintain minimum record keep accounting and so versus a company which receives funding under CADEC and needs to submit CADEC report, like for the industry you guys are in. So many of you need to submit CADEC report at the end of the year. So when you have that kind of requirement, definitely you have to make sure that you're going to choose such a software which would allow you to facilitate, to have CADEC report anytime you need, so that you can compare, between the data in your system and the data you provide in the CADEC, right? So one of the key factor I would like to consider is chart of accounts. So this is the most important thing when you're making an accounting software or implementing something. You need to make sure that the kind of chart of accounts you need based on the purpose of your company or kind of operation of your organizations, it is able to handle it. So this is so important, because if you don't have, like, there are some softwares I know they only allow a few accounting heads. So you are not able to create anything. They have something on their list and you have to live with them. So that's really hard, because sometimes you may want to keep things differently for a purpose, but the system, the software doesn't allow that. So you need to make sure it's flexible. You can create, you can change, you can modify the way your business needs, right? And another thing I observed over the period is like, so for example, if I talk about a small company that receives funding from 3 different sources for 3 different purposes, but there are a lot of people who same people work for different programs or different against different fundings, right? So you need to allocate the payroll and other benefits of that person to throughout the programs. So if your software allows you to post the cost of one person to 3 different projects, so that would be so helpful for you. Like you can actually see the report as a whole. At the same time, if you want to see project wise, you can do that, right? So I was mentioning about the CADEC report. So some of the companies which need to submit CADEC reports, so you need to make sure that, okay, the kind of accounting coding you have in your CADEC, and you are able to do the same, or you can align your accounting coding with the CADEC so that you can have it readily available. And also, this is very important because most of the software that doesn't allow you to keep the documents with them. So make sure that the software you're going to choose, it allows to upload the documents, scan copy of the document, so that you can have it from any device anywhere in the world. Make sure that it allows you to trace your accounts payable, receivable with aging, so that you can control it. And last but not the least is bank reconciliation. Is so important, and it becomes so clumsy when you have a lot of transactions in your organization. So make sure that your accounting software allows you to do bank reconciliation. I think that's the very few key things you need to take care when you are setting up any accounting system, depending on the complexity of your operations. So that's the things in brief, and I can answer more of your queries if you have any when we have our panel discussion and a question and answer session.
Great.
So I'm giving it over to you, Taylor. Okay.
Thank you, Arif. That was awesome. And there are some questions that came in through the chat, but what we'll do is we'll keep moving along, and we will save them for our question period. We're going to move to Jeffrey, who is the manager at McCain and Associates. He specializes in HST, GST tax issues, Canadian, US tax returns, real estate transactions, and small businesses. I'm sure that a lot of the attendees may want to get a little bit of a handle on certainly the domestic and international sort of tax returns, because I've found those particularly tricky in the past. But everyone, please meet Jeffrey. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Thanks, Julian. Just to give a little bit of a background on our office, we are located in Midtown Toronto. We do focus on various areas of tax, whether it's personal, corporate, and we do quite a bit of work in the entertainment industry as a whole, whether it's musicians, actors, stage performers. So what I want to talk about today is various issues that you do want to consider when meeting with your accountant and filing your taxes. The first thing I want to discuss relates to a service the CRA has called Represent a Client, and an authorization that most accountants will have you sign if you're going to be using them for your taxes. It's an extremely helpful tool that lets them get carry forward information. They can see your tax slips. And even in the case of the CRA is reviewing you, they then have the authorization to act on your behalf to resolve the situation. However, the one thing you will want to consider is if you have changed accountants over the past couple of years, you will want to make sure that you actually go in and contact the CRA to cancel your authorization, as technically, if they're still a representative of you, they can still act on your behalf. And it's up to the taxpayer to go in and actually cancel that. You can do that by calling the CRA and letting them know that they're no longer your representative. Now, when you're meeting with an accountant, every accountant does it a little differently, but the one thing that you want to consider not only is minimizing your tax bill, but you also want to minimize your accounting fee. Now, a lot of accountants do charge based on time. So you will want to make sure that you keep your return and your information as organized as possible. Like, for example, if you come with a nice summary of all your income and expenses, versus if you're giving a shoebox of receipts, it does impact how much work the accountant's doing, and in turn, it will impact your fee. Now, what most accountants have for their clients is a questionnaire, and I'm going to share the questionnaire that my firm has. And what you can see on this questionnaire is it just goes into your personal information, your status, whether or not you have any kids. But the second part that we have is a summary of most of the expense categories that we see, and this is tailored to the entertainment industry specifically.
So would this be your chart of accounts, essentially?
This would be this is more for people that don't have any bookkeeping software and they just track their income and expenses themselves.
Right. Sorry, Jeff, what I'm saying is that within the bookkeeping software, would this be an example of what people could put in as charter of accounts, or no?
Yeah, this could be all your chart of accounts if you are going to use a bookkeeping software.
Thank you. Okay,
But
go on.
but what it does is it just kind of breaks things down into different categories for you. And at least what we've seen with new clients coming in is when you're looking at this chart here, it does bring up other expenses that you might not have thought that you would have been eligible for, or even could deduct towards your business. Like for example, in the music industry, you're doing a lot of work, not researching other musicians, doing a lot of thoughts towards songwriting. So you do want to pay attention to all the costs that you have towards the development of your work. I believe this will be shared afterwards that people can download.
Great.
But keeping a good control of your expenses does make things a lot easier, not only for you to see your own profitability, but it also helps with your just seeing where you're spending your money. So if you're spending, it allows you to sort of see if you're spending a lot of money on, let's say, like meals and entertainment, it kind of just helps you reflect on how you can increase your profit in the long term. The next thing I want to discuss is just various problem areas where, at least that I see people in the sort of the music industry having. The first relates to HST. If you are making revenue of more than 30,000, you will want to ensure that you go in and register for HST. And if you're just working in Ontario, it's an additional sales tax that you have to collect when you're going and doing a performance. However, what the CRA will do is, let's say if you're making 50,000, they will actually come and they can send you a query asking you, why aren't you registered for HST? And of that 50,000, they're basically going to say that revenue was inclusive of HST, and you're going to get a tax bill for about $6,000. So you will want to make sure once you hit that threshold that you are registered.
Quick question for you, Jeff.
Yep.
When you hit that 30,000 threshold, should you be a sole proprietorship or should you be an incorporated company?
For that specifically for like a proprietor versus a corporation, that's more in the individual case, because the main benefit of having a corporation is when you're leaving money in the company. So for example, if you're a musician making 100 but netting 10, it's not really worthwhile to incorporate. But if you're in that same case, like if you're making 80,000 and you only need 50,000 to live on, a corporation is beneficial because that additional 30,000, you're paying tax at 13% rather than 30%. And for the question on HST that came up, it is 30,000 gross revenue, not after expenses. Just to specify. And then the other area that we see a lot of, it's the issue with the CRAs, they're not always very clear when it comes to the entertainment industry and eligible expenses. So what you'll see is if you're purchasing clothing that you're going to be using for performances and then also wearing personally, typically in the case of a review, the CRA will disallow that as a business expense. However, if you are buying, let's say, specialty clothing and costumes for your shows that you wouldn't really wear out other than performing, that it is a tax deductible expense. Another component would be your meals. If you are just catching up with another friend who's a musician and you're just talking about life, that wouldn't be a deductible expense for tax purposes. But rather, if you're on the job working all day and you're buying meals, that would be eligible. Or if you're meeting with a potential client for you to come in and perform, that would be an eligible meal. The other thing to consider,
which isn't happening so much right now.
No, unfortunately not. Hopefully we're able to go to concerts soon enough. The other thing that I wanted to touch on was your car. So when you're a sole proprietor, you really need to keep track of your mileage on when you're driving to business or for business, because what will happen is all of your kilometers, your percentage will determine how much of your expenses you can deduct. And if you are ever reviewed by the CRA, they will ask you to provide, for these expenses, you do have to provide a breakdown of where you're driving for work, the date, the distance, and the purpose. So if you don't have that auto log at that point in time, it makes things significantly more difficult to deal with a review. And if you actually don't provide it, you're actually they're just going to disallow your entire car expenses. And the last thing I wanted to touch on actually relates to all of these government benefits that have come out over the past year, specifically CERB, which ended in September, and the CRB, which came out right after CERB ended. I just want to give everyone a reminder that that is taxable for when you're filing your tax return. So basically, depending on your income, you will have to repay up to, at a minimum, 20% on that.
On the CERB?
On CERB, yeah, just because basically when you received a payment for CERB, it's the exact same as making $2,000 for, let's say, a job. So if you're in that case, you might have to repay a portion of that back. But so I just say make sure when you're taking these payments, although the new CRB, they do take, I think it's 10 or 20% of tax withheld on the payments for you. It is just something to consider when you're filing your taxes.
Okay, thanks, Jeffrey. Really appreciate that. Well, we're going to move on to Ingrid. Hello, Ingrid. Can you guys hear me? Hello? Am I muted?
Unmute myself. Okay,
there you are. Okay,
yeah, sorry
there
about
she
that.
is. No problem. I met Ingrid a long time ago, and Ingrid is a financial advisor and certified financial planner. We met, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I suppose.
Close to that.
Close to that now. And see her at shows all over town when we had shows. And Ingrid also has a blog called The Wealthy Musician with a lot of tidbits and a lot of information that you may find helpful. We'll post that up on the chat so that people can go to the link there. But Ingrid is a financial planner that is often trying to help people not make crazy, bad financial decisions and make really good ones. So I'm going to let her take the floor and just tell everyone who she is and what she does and a little bit of advice for you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Julian. I just wanted to show you my high-tech way of keeping my receipts. Sorry. You know what? It's something. And I'm being self-employed. I have to do the same sort of thing. So every week, once a week, I go through my wallet, and you know what? Sometimes you got to do things in bite-sized chunks. And I think I'm a big advocate of that. And I think, you know what? If this is good, I write on what's it for. Yeah, it's a good place to start. So thank you for having me on this panel. One of the things that I've been doing with my work for musicians is I kind of stumbled into this. I got a referral from a client to say, listen, I know this guy, the guy makes tons of money right now. He's a session musician, this, that, and the other. And when I sat down with him and I started to sort of kind of say, okay, well, why are you sitting with me and that sort of thing? And I quickly found that his level of just basic fundamental financial understanding probably wasn't where it probably should have been. And that's no one's fault. I think it's to do with our education system, to be quite honest, because just last year they started talking about personal financial stuff in high school. So, you know, what my job is to say, listen, let's take a look and see what you're doing. Sometimes we go through cash flow and you know, things like just paying the service charges on those white label bank machines can actually add up a lot. And so my goal is to sort of figure out what your goals are and what their goals are. And, you know, for example, some people say, well, I want to add to my RSP. Well, if you're not making a lot of money right now, you might as well let that RSP room build. But if you have money to save, put it in a tax-free savings account. So everybody's situation is different, and everybody needs to sort of look at it from, you know, either why, what are my objectives? What are my long-term kind of things that I want to do? Do I want to buy a house, buy a car, tour like crazy? Obviously, we're not doing that right now. So I think at the end of the day, we need to save. And I know that really sounds stupid right now because it's really, really hard for people to save right now, but we can save something. that's better than nothing. And that's sort of where I try and position it. So in the days where, people were doing gigs and making money and that sort of thing, I would say, I want you to save 10% of what you make in a tax-free savings account. And that was a good starting point for clients. So I don't know if you guys ever remember the somebody called the wealthy barber. So I kind of stole his idea, but I and that's when I created this, because it's a good sounding board, I think, for people when they have questions specific to musicians. Like Jeffrey was saying, CRB, the CERB is taxable, and a lot of people don't realize that. And there's just, I think, a lot of space out there where I think the acknowledgement of having a professional in your court makes a lot of sense. Sure, you can go do it yourself and whatever, but I think at the end of the day, getting, for example, advice off some group on Facebook may not be a good thing either. So I think when some of people I deal with get to this point, our job is to help them, right? I think another thing that I would like to touch on, excuse me, is when it comes to what we're doing now for bookkeeping, honestly, getting organized is the big thing. Like, yeah, I have my lame little envelope here, but at least it's something. And I think when you do that, I think that's a big help, because I think people get inundated, and I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that haven't filed taxes in 3 to 4 years. Jeffrey, I don't know if you've had that experience. Get your taxes filed, like, come on. And it's just I know it's such like, oh, I haven't done this. If you can spend like half an hour a day on something when you're really, really behind, do it. And that goes with anything, right? So that's kind of my 2 cents worth. Does that answer any questions? I don't know, but yeah.
Great. So the idea that I'm getting from you, Ingrid, and the main thing is there's 2. So people are not educated enough as to what they should be, what accounts they should be saving their money in, what strategies they need to use, like for instance, a tax-free savings account versus the RSVP account. That's all information that I think musicians and people in the industry should definitely take into account. And then the other thing is, biting things off in small chunks, because people do get inundated with a lot of things, and strategy is one of the most effective ways to build your future.
Correct. I call it cleaning your financial garage. I don't know if anyone has a garage, but how does it feel? How do you feel when you look in your garage like, yeah, man, it's clean? So, I mean, you don't do it in one day.
That's laundry for me.
Again, laundry, I have the same thing. I hit all my laundry in the corner, but anyways, but I think, you have to start somewhere, and to just say, I'll do it tomorrow, do it tomorrow, next week, next month, that doesn't help your situation. You have to sort of bite the bullet and say, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go buy these envelopes, and I like this idea, and I'm gonna put on, go whatever. I guess you can't curbside pick up from Staples or whatever, and just that's a start. And it's just like someone you don't start running marathons when you've never jogged before. Like, you go out and you start slowly, and you walk around the block, and then you build it up. So I think we could use that for lots of different things in our lives, not just financials. But I think it's something that I think helps people. And there's a lot of anxiety out there right now. There's a lot of, people are, like I said, overwhelmed and inundated and anxious. Me too, sometimes, right? And I think sometimes you got to take a step back and say, okay, what am I going to do today? What are the 3 most important things I need to get accomplished today, and do those things? And I'm a big person of, like, again, another book, checklist, write it down, check it off, because I think, these are things that are maybe old school, and I'm old and whatever, but I think they work. And so there's lots of high-tech stuff out there, and apps and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, if you can do a spreadsheet and keep your envelopes January, February, March, whatever you want to do, it's a start. It's probably one step further than you were before, and it's not very expensive to do either.
Perfect. Thank you, Ingrid. Much appreciated. We're going to move on to our next guest, Chris. Hello, Chris. And Chris is an opera singer and certified financial planner, passionate about making high-level financial services available to this community, the artistic community, regardless of income level. He is currently focusing on financial fundamentals, cash flow, variable income, debt management, and behavioral, I like this, finance. Hi, Chris, how are you?
I'm great, how are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you. So The floor is yours.
The floor is mine. Well, I'm going to kind of pick off of where Ingrid left off, because I love so many of those ideas. My background is opera. So all of my training is in opera. And I kind of stumbled into finance, not because my brain always worked in numbers, but because it didn't. And I made all the mistakes that we've already kind of gotten really good advice. I didn't get an HST number in time. I didn't save number for taxes. I got into tons of debt from those things, and eventually realized that I couldn't avoid it any longer. And I needed to look at this thing that kind of was haunting me a little bit. And one of the things that I learned, and it kind of takes off of what Ingrid was talking about, was I was looking at this financial problem in a way that wasn't really helpful. I kept on thinking about, if I just need to figure out my finances and then I'll be fine. Like, if I just work this weekend really hard, I'll be done money and I'll never have to think about money again. And wouldn't that be a better sell? Like, if we could just say, just work really hard on Saturday and you'll never have to figure it out again. But that's not really what we're talking about. What we're actually talking about, finances aren't a problem, even though there's a whole bunch of math that's attached to it. It's a craft. And I think for those of us in the creative sphere, especially musicians, we get craft. And so when you're looking to build it, there's no quick way to do it. It takes time. And the big thing that I like to think about, both in my finances and the people that I work with, is building financial technique. Because it reframes this idea from, I need to figure out kind of math problem finances now, to what are the skills that are going to help me as things change? Because things are going to change. As soon as we figure out a plan for right now, things will shift. You'll change, the world will change. This last year has been an excellent example in, I guess the word of the year was uncertainty, but that's a pretty mild way to put what's happened to especially the live music field. I think when it comes back to whether I think about performing or finances, it's technique that helps. Doesn't always make things completely easier, but it gives you something to reach back to. So when we're talking about building a financial technique, what are those fundamentals? So for me, when it came back to my opera training, one of the annoying things I constantly had to be reminded by my teacher was, when I had a problem, no matter what I'd been at it for 10 years, I'd come back, I'd want to work on a really hard passage. And what would we work on? Breathing. We'd come back to that same fundamental over and over again. And all of you musicians, that's going to be different for whatever your instrument is, but there's going to be those things that you come back to again and again. And I think that those things exist in finance too. And it's good to identify them so we know, like, these are the questions that we come back to over and over again, whether we're trying to figure out, how do I save more? How do I pay off debt? Or whether we're trying to figure out, how do I figure out retirement or risk management stuff or whatever it is. So for me, I wanted to kind of touch on a few of those questions and give you a few ideas about how to think about them, and then, at least pique your, not your interest necessarily, because we are talking about finances, although if it does, great, but your curiosity a little bit about how to solve some of these and start working on these. So the first big question, and Ingrid, you mentioned this already, is this: what is your money for? Before you start looking at, the numbers, you have to figure out what you're trying to do. And I think for lots of us as musicians, we need to look a little harder, because it's not just for money's sake. A lot of us chose this career and this path not because we were trying to maximize wealth opportunities. I'm not saying that because you're not making good money, but not necessarily just to see that number go up and to the right or the bank balance grow. So you need to connect it to something that matters to you right now. And whether that's through the language of goals and kind of looking at, this is what I'm trying to accomplish this year, this is what I'm trying to do, this is what I'm trying to build, or if money is not a lot, like it is for so many of the people, us in the kind of live performing sphere, try using the language of values. What are the important things this year that you want to focus on? Security, success, creativity, health, and using that as a focal point. Because if you don't define what finances and money is for in your life, it's really hard to convince yourself to go through all the boring technical stuff and write down expenses and make a bookkeeping system. It's like trying to sell music by saying you'll love scales, you'll love doing scales over and over and over again. That's not the thing that's fun. Connect it to something that's actually really meaningful. And I really encourage the people that I work with to have that list of things. Have a few things that you're working on this year. If you can't think about the year, shorten it. This month, what is your money for this month? goals, values, anything, but something that you can kind of refer to all the time, so that when you're looking at how you're using your money, you can say, is this helping me do this thing? Is this good spending for me? And kind of gives you a lens for success. Sorry, go ahead, Julian.
So just a quick question, Chris, is say it's a month. Most people have been on CERB for 2020, and most of people's concerns are probably as basic as just paying the rent and putting
100%.
food on the table.
Yeah.
So how do you find an emotional attachment when you have those two things, which are necessities, in standing in your way? What's the suggestion for that?
100%. I think that this year, especially when we start to think about goal planning and things, it starts to get
Quite daunting.
Frivolous pretty quickly sometimes, and being like, look, I'm just trying to get through the month. But I still think that it's important, even if it literally is, look, family is the thing I'm getting through. How you express it, I think, matters. Health, family, security. I'm just trying to get through this month. It still gives you a focal point, even if crisis narrows our focal point. It does. But it still is practicing the technique of being like, when I'm looking at my spending, I can go through that lens of saying, is this helping me get to the next month? Is this helping me feed my security? It still gives you, even it could be just that simple and straightforward right now if there is not a lot of money around. But it's going through that process of when there is a bit more money, or it feels a little bit thing, you're still going through that habit forming. This is what my money is for. This is how I connect it. Because I think that one of the things that lots of folks feel is that, like, your money is over here and then you're over here. You're kind of disconnected from the financial part of your life. So trying to figure out how do you make money another way that you speak in the world, and kind of and make those decisions a little bit more deliberately versus default helps. It doesn't mean that, like you said, you're completely right. It might be a very simple exercise in the beginning. And so I'll toss out the second question, which is, what do you need to run your life? And one of the things when you're trying to make a plan, call it a budget, call it a cash flow plan, call it whatever you want. If you Google that process, it's a little bit like, take your average income and divide it by 12, and then you've already closed the window, because that is not a lot of people's lives. So if you're a gigging musician, or you have lots of income streams, when you're making a cash flow plan, I think it helps really to start from the expense side of things, start from the need side of things, and really try to figure out what you need to run your life, and not what do you need as a minimum amount to stay technically alive, but like, what's your version of need? And so I'm going to drop here, I'll share my screen quickly just to show how I like to think about that. I like to put expenses into 4 big piles. So when you're thinking about this, first big pile is fixed expenses. So what in your life is the same every month? This is a bastion of certainty in an unstable world. We're talking about rent, we're talking about utilities, internet, all that stuff. The same every month. So that's in the big pile. I like Ingrid's kind of cleaning the garage metaphor again. This is the same idea. We're just trying to like Mary Kondo ourselves into big piles. So fixed expenses in the first pile. Second big pile. What else happens every month, but the amount changes? Food being a great example right there. Might be other things, but groceries, takeout, pet food, gas, those type things. And if you're just starting and doing this for the first time, let me encourage you just to start with the words. Don't worry about the numbers quite yet. Just kind of put the words in the different piles. The third one, and this is where I see a lot of this, for lots of us don't think about these things. What happens every year, but not every month? What are the other things that happen? We're talking about gifts, we're talking about clothes, we're talking about annual credit card fees, we're talking about Costco memberships, like this kind of stuff. It's really easy to convince ourselves that we can't possibly know, but even just acknowledging that it's a regular part of the year, really important, because these are the kind of expenses that kind of come along and totally derail the plan. So getting a little bit clear on that can be really, really helpful. So again, start with the words, then we'll worry about numbers after. And then the fourth big pile is business. What do you need to run your business? Office studio rental, coachings, clothing. What type of things do you need? Instrument repair, all that stuff. So start by putting words in those 4 piles, and then start by populating things a little bit. So fixed expenses, even if you don't know, you can probably look it up. That one you might be able to figure out. The other ones are trickier. If you're the kind of person that loves the idea of going back into your bank balance and figuring out a ton of like doing all that math, go forth and do it. If you're not, I give you full permission to not. And just start coming up with thoughtful numbers for these categories. And what I mean by that is, don't say groceries, I think it's around $200. Think, okay, how often do I do a big shop? Maybe I go once a week, it's around $50. So I know it's, or around $100. Okay, that's around $400 for the month already. Do I do like a little shop in between? Yeah, I usually go to the corner store for $10 thing of what I forget. Great, $440. Make it just nice and simple, but connect it to what you do in your life. It's really easy to start solving a math problem here, but this is a reflection of what you actually do in your life. Same thing with some of those annual things. Don't look at something like gifts and say, I probably spend $500 a year on gifts. Think, who do I buy gifts for? What does it cost to buy a birthday gift for these people? Do I buy do I celebrate Christmas? Is that a Christmas gift? Are there other kind of gifts that happen throughout here? Just start jotting it down and thinking through what are the things that you do and coming up with a number that way. And slowly go through these areas and start populating it with thoughtful numbers to give yourself an idea of what your life costs. Because I find one of the most useful numbers for somebody making variable income is what this sheet kind of encourages you to do at the bottom. Take those monthly numbers and add them up. Take the annual number and divide it by 12, kind of make it a monthly number to give yourself an average monthly cost of your life. And what that can do is give you a really good metric for things like, how much income do I need to bring in to be okay? Not just my rent plus $200, but all these kind of things. How much am I kind of, even now, how much is my CERB or CRB covering? And how much am I going to need to pull from credit for a month? Because that's the reality that lots of us are living in. But instead of the kind of uncontrolled drawing on a line of credit to say, this is what I need, this is how much this covers, this is what's left over. You can start to kind of release yourself from the thing that so many of us say, which is, I really need to spend less, I need to make more, and I just wish that I had enough. Which are three unsolvable problems: more than what, less than what, and how much is enough. So working on this in a bit more of a detailed way can really start giving you a tool to start fleshing out some of that idea and giving you a sense of how many gigs do I need to take in a month before I have some money available for other things. Just start, like Ingrid said, just kind of chip away at it a little bit. Use a worksheet like this, sit down, wait till you get stressed, go for a walk. Start chipping it away again the next day.
Are you able to share? Are you able to share the worksheet with the panel?
100%. I'm going to drop it into the Zoom chat right now, and you'll be able to see it. And I'll make sure it's on the resource list that gets released kind of on a broader scale.
Sure.
So
thank you, Chris. That's very cool. I have one question for you. So on the sheet itself,
yep.
You take your monthly and your annual plus half of your business and half of your.
No, I see it. It's actually divided by 12. It's the slashes 1 over. So basically what you're trying to do is say, this is what I spend per year on those annual things, but you're trying to make it into a monthly amount. So it's a bit easier to kind of wrap your head around.
Understood. Great. So that is our esteemed panel with Chris and Ingrid, Arif and Jeff, and myself. As a musician, I found a lot of this information very, very helpful. And I personally decided a long time ago that I would be a corporation, and that has really been a godsend for me, especially when it comes to grants and stuff like that. So I've not been a sole proprietor for over 15 years, and just putting my 2 cents into the mix, I just found it to be extremely helpful from a tax purpose, from an expenditure purpose, and from applying for grants purpose as well. So we're going to open up the floor to everybody else who has questions. Also, I can recite a couple of the questions because I think there was one directed right for you, Arif, right at the beginning about, was it called the Wave? Is it compatible with a Mac computer? Because someone said they had tried it and we're having a bit of trouble with it.
So I never tried that one in Mac though, to be very honest, but I think like, most of the softwares and programs they make, they keep in mind that a lot of users, they use Mac, right? So if
Most musicians do.
Right. So what I'm saying, like, it's very normal that it should work in both. Maybe you can Google it, or they actually have like, forums, user forums. You can throw your questions or problems, and they can solve it.
Okay, so then a quick question: is there another free app other than Wave that you think is a good app to use? I know that Invoice to Go is free for a little bit, and they may still have a free section, but I'm not sure. I haven't used it in a very long time.
So if you check the other one, Zero.
It's called Xero?
Correct, the Zero.
Okay.
There's also a good one, and that's free.
Right.
And again, I don't use Mac, so I am not sure. But what I believe personally, like, there are a lot of Mac users around, and they would keep, both the versions.
Okay, great. Here's a question.
Sorry to interrupt. I just looked
Yes,
it
please
up
go ahead.
online, and Wave does apparently support on Macs. It's entirely
Perfect.
web-based.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you.
And you know what? So many of these accounting systems supports, you don't have to download. So they have their online versions. So you just use web and you just do everything there. So it doesn't matter whether you're using Mac or, other versions of devices. It doesn't matter. It's a web version, so you can use it anywhere. You don't have to download anything.
Great. Thank you, Arif. Here's a question from Emily. My daughter will likely start post-secondary in 2.5 years. I'm a full-time musician, and I will be the only person providing for her post-secondary education. I've been putting money aside when possible, but is there a best way to do this, to make the most of my savings? I have managed to set up some RESPs the past couple of years, although I might not be able to do that this year, of course. This is Emily asking the panel. I'm not sure who would like to field that right now.
I'll take that one.
Sure.
Yeah, so Emily, one thing you got to remember, thank God you've set up an RESP because that's awesome, is the last year your daughter is going to get any grant is the calendar year in which she turns 17. Now, I've got one of those upstairs who's on his game right now. So he's been maxed out. And that's very important because you're getting 20% on your money. So if you can do, if this is the year she turns 17, I'm not sure, that would be this is kind of the last year she's going to get grant. Another thing you should get your daughter to look into is scholarships. I think this is something that nobody's like kind of overlooked. Like she should be applying for scholarships everywhere that she can think of. Try to apply for a scholarship. And you'd be surprised if when she goes online and does her research, she could be like into, I don't know, maybe she's a volunteer for pets or whatever. That's a good place to go, or different banks and credit unions. They have scholarships. So I'm not sure if you're a particular ethnicity or not. Being born into Orthodox marriage, Ukrainian is ours. And I know that like the Ukrainian credit union or whatever, the Bedinchnists, whatever they call themselves now, they have scholarships. So at the end of the day, there's a lot out there, and kids, I think, just gloss them over. So competition is probably slimmer than she thinks.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ingrid. We got a question from our Facebook page. Here's the question from Don Tyler Watson. Question about 2020 and collecting and paying GST, QST, because they are in Quebec. If we didn't clear that mark, 300,000 mark, does that change anything? So the question is probably for Jeffrey. I don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah. What I would say in that case is I think it was meant to be 30,000 is once you're registered for GST, HST, QST, as long as you're registered, you do have to collect and file the return. It doesn't matter if you drop to, let's say this year you only make, you said under, so let's just say 20,000. It doesn't matter. You still have to collect on that income, the HST. It's not sort of once you're registered, you have to keep collecting.
Got it. Does that help, Dawn? Well, actually, she can't hear me because she's on Facebook. So, or he. I'm not sure if Dawn is a he or she or him, but they cannot hear me. they're on Facebook. How about that? There are other questions here, and one of them is about credit cards. Credit cards are maxed out and stressing me out. It seems I can't make any dent. Should I declare bankruptcy?
Oh, I'll take that one. And I
Sure.
wanted to talk about that, if that's okay. So I worked for a bank for 12 years. So I understand that, you know, credit cards are out there and some of them are like ridiculous or 20-something%. So a couple things with credit cards is if you're really having struggles making ends meet, I'm not sure what your situation is. The first thing you should do is talk to the bank or whoever holds your credit card and say, listen, I want to set up some sort of payment plan, or, you know, I'm a musician and I want to pay, but can you stop the interest from keep the interest clock keep ticking? So talk to whoever your credit card is with first. My next point about credit cards is sometimes people have like these fancy schmancy pointsy whatever ones, and they cost like a fortune, and you don't use them, and you know, get rid of them. Go to a lower cost credit card. There's a lot of ones that are at you might pay like $20-30 a year, but the interest rate is way lower. So that's another option with credit cards. And I think my final rant on credit cards and lines of credit, if you're fortunate enough to have any of those that you haven't had to tap into them. Even if it's just like $100, because I've seen situations where people just, and I have a blog, I think on my blog about this. You know, if you don't use a credit card, there was a lady that had like, I don't know, she had 600 Walmart bucks or something. And because she hadn't used her Walmart credit card in 6 months, she lost her 600 Walmart bucks. So she ended up having, you know, Pat Foran, that great guy who's consumer guy that's on CTV. So anyways, like it took social media pressure to get them to reinstate her credit card and also to give her back her Walmart bucks. And there was another one of my day gig clients, as I call them. He goes, Ingrid, I got this thing in the mail. It says they cut off my credit line. Well, it was a secured line of credit that they hadn't used in a year, but the bank just said, cut them off and said, well, you're not using it and doesn't meet future needs anymore. So yeah, like, sorry. And
question for you.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Does that affect your credit rating at all?
It depends on how they close it. So in this case, the client had a zero balance. So they closed it because that should not affect your credit rating. That's a good question. But if you have for example, if you want the worst one, don't stiff your telcos. Like, don't stiff your Bells and your Teluses and Fidos, because trust me, they are the first ones that will go and slap a collection on you. And you say, well, I'm not going to pay Telus because I hate them and I owe them $40. They're going to be the first ones to put a collection on you. And then when you get that R9, which is a really bad credit rating, and 9 times out of 10, it's the telecommunications companies that are going to do that. So be careful who you think you're going to stiff, just because if you need to borrow again, people will pour. And it's a good thing also to get your credit rating. And so you can go through Equifax or TransUnion, and you can get them for free. But generally speaking, Julian, if it's closed because of a non-payment, that's a different situation. But I think if
that will affect it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you don't owe money, I don't know if that's treated differently. I'm not sure, to be quite honest.
Understood.
Just to step in for a second on the last question, if you're considering bankruptcy, you can talk to a debt trustee and not start the process. Talking to a debt trustee who is the kind of person who can actually guide you through either a consumer proposal or a bankruptcy, doesn't start the process. You can have a meeting with them and they'll be able to explain to you really clearly, like on your situation, what a bankruptcy might do as far as what kind of assets it'll affect, how it'll affect your credit report, what the like filing requirements are going to be. So if you're kind of getting to that point, you're like, what will this do? It's okay to talk to a debt trustee. It's not like you can't step back from that at that point. Learn more, and then they'll be able to answer that question a little bit more specifically.
Okay, we got 3 questions that we got to do quickly because we're running out of time. One is, does CRA have a standard musician chart of accounts form online? Jeffrey?
They don't.
Okay, they do not. So we have resources that we posted here today, and some of those will be really helpful for charter of accounts. Okay, also, a friend of ours deregistered for HST. Is that advisable? Jeffrey?
I'd say if you're like, it really depends. Like if this, obviously 2020 was an odd year and we don't know 2021 has in store for us. But if you're going to go back to working full-time as a musician, you're going to spend probably a decent amount of time trying to reopen the HST account. So for just the 1 year of filing, you're probably better off not deregistering. Like, the other benefit is you're still incurring expenses, so you do get to recoup all those IT
So the short answer is no.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
wouldn't
advisable.
advise it.
Okay.
I'd like
question.
to add just a little bit here. So, because if you keep one, it doesn't cost you anything, right? So it doesn't, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to registering. So it's better to keep it because it has kind of records, like previous year records associated with it, which might be helpful for you in the future.
Here's the last question. Here we go. And this is regarding CERB. We know it's taxable, but here, basically, how does the government want musicians or people to list the income?
I can't say with certainty, but from what I've read online, they will be preparing you a T4A slip or some sort of tax slip that'll report that income.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone. My computer's about to die, so I'm going to go plug it in. But this is the Money Matters workshop right here, hosted by myself. Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Arif. Thank you, Jeffrey. And thanks to everyone for showing up and being part of the panel. Really do appreciate it. There we go. I'm all plugged in now.
That's good. I just also wanted to thank you all for joining us today. I think as far as I could see from the comments, it was really useful for everyone as well. And thank you so much for answering all the questions. Maybe just before we go, maybe if you would like to mention once again how people can find you on social media or website, that would be nice.
Sure, Ingrid.
So my side hustle for this purpose website is www.thewealthymusician.ca. And if you have any questions, you can email me at Ingrid, INGRID, @thewealthymusician.ca.
Great, thank you. Arif?
Hi, everyone. I really don't have any website. But however, I provide services and suggestions and help out people oftentimes. So you can email me. It's my email address is like M for Mohammed, ARIF, MAUDDIN83 @hotmail.com. Mohammed Arif Uddin 83 @hotmail.com.
Excellent.
Or
Thank you,
if you
Jeffrey.
search me by name, probably you'll get somewhere in my reference.
You'll find him on LinkedIn.
You can find me on my firm's website, McCann, MCCANNLLP.com. And my email is gblasuti @mccannllp.com.
Awesome. And Chris Hinds?
Yeah, you can find me at ragstoreasonable.com or my email, which is chris@ragstoreasonable.com.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
That's great.
Blessings to everyone. Stay safe and sound. And yeah, we'll get through this lockdown and hopefully we'll give high fives.
Yeah, just make sure to, just a quick reminder that we will be back as TBS with our Maple Blues Award show actually coming up February 1st with our Toronto session. It's going to air a live stream and it's going to continue throughout February every Monday with live streams from Ottawa, Montreal, and Vancouver. So we just announced our performers and hosts for that. So make sure to check it out on our website and social media as well. So, and we hope you can join us. Otherwise, I guess we all wish you a happy, nice Sunday, end of the Sunday.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.